Welcome to That's Not Cinema, a movie podcast, a reason to talk about movies. I'm your host, Jeffrey Hemingway. Today's movie is Ford v. Ferrari. Take it away, Marty.
A film that's like a theme park film, for example, the Marvel type pictures, where the theaters become amusement parks. That's a different experience. And it's not even, I was saying earlier, it's not cinema, it's something else. Not cinema, it's something else. Not cinema, it's something else. Not cinema, it's something else.
All right. Directed by James Mangold, written by Jez and John Henry Butterworth and Jason Keller, starring Matt Damon and Christian Bale. Runtime of 152 minutes, released in theaters November 15th, 2019. DVD and streaming January 28th, 2020. Studio 20th Century Fox. Budget of $97.6 million and a box office of $225.5 million. Our Rotten Tomatoes score, which means everything and nothing all at the very same time. The critics scored it a 92% and the audience scored it a 98%. Catch up, critics. Catch up. Here's our summary. American car designer Carroll Shelby and driver Ken Miles battle corporate interference and the laws of physics to build a revolutionary race car for Ford in order to defeat Ferrari at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1966. Expectations. What were my expectations? So my expectations were actually pretty high for this one. I'm a fan of James Mangold, most notably to me for his work with Hugh Jackman and the Wolverine character, me being a huge comic book fan. So obviously through such films as The Wolverine and of course the masterwork that is Logan. So having a chance to see Mangold paired with two movie stars such as Matt Damon and Christian Bale seemed like a no-brainer on paper. It just seemed obvious. That just seemed obvious. So, at this point, we all know what dedication and craft Bale brings to a role. So that on its own was worth the ticket. But then you pair him with someone of the caliber of a Damon and it's just like, just kind of a match made in heaven. You give them James Mangold and I'm like, hey, look at what we got here. This is something I definitely want to see. Now, mind you, I am not the biggest car fan. Not that I dislike cars or anything like that. I know there are people who are like into cars. And when this movie came out, people were like, whoa, I gotta see that. Whereas like, I honestly couldn't care less about cars. Like as long as I can get to where I need to get to, I'm cool. Like, and obviously you want a nice looking car, but like other than that, like, I don't know about the V12s and the wheels and the, like, just get me where I need to go. and we'll be fine. Like so like I have no interest whatsoever. So that tempered my lofty expectations a bit. But again, I just came back to what was on paper and the combination of Mangold and Bale and Damon. And at that point, it didn't matter what the movie was. It could have been about anything. And I would have watched it. So like in my head, the ticket was already purchased because you had those three names attached to it, regardless of what the actual content of the film was going to be about. Right. So let me set the scene. With my ticket being already purchased in my mind, you would think I went to the opening weekend to see this Ford v Ferrari. No. It took me a couple weeks, honestly. And for no real reason other than the ever reusable excuses of life and laziness, but eventually I took my lazy ass to the theater, ordered my patented chicken tenders, honey mustard and blue raspberry icy. Went to an 11:45 a.m. viewing, which was amazing and perfect. Theater all to myself and buckled up for what would be a hell of a ride. And got out of that theater, walked out, hopped into the car, pulled the phone out, started to tweet because I had to give my tweet review. And it went like this. Ford v Ferrari is the reason you go to the movies. It's full of adrenaline and full of heart. Bale and Damon are fucking movie stars. Just fucking movie stars. add a little bit to my tweet there. So clearly I love this movie, as you can tell by my tweet, and just how enthusiastic I was just to tweet that. And I just love this movie, man. I can't believe it took me that long to even go. I don't know why I didn't go opening weekend. Again, just life and laziness, and like I just can't believe I didn't go opening weekend for this film. It's such a crowd pleaser. Obviously, as you heard in the Rotten Tomatoes audience score, 98. Like it's a crowd pleaser to the nines. Like it's like, again, I mean, not being a car guy, doesn't matter. Like, just you go watch it. You're rooting for these guys. You're loving what you're seeing every second on the screen. It's just, it's amazing. Like it gets your adrenaline pumping, rooting for these guys. And there's just no match for watching two movie stars acting their asses off. Bale and Damon's chemistry was such a treat to watch and experience. You know, credit to Mangold and the writers for capturing their, I'd say, tumultuous yet heartfelt friendship, you know, on the screen. Like, for them to be able to portray it on the screen was pretty special. It came off as really believable and relatable. And then just to have these two guys that just respected each other and often were friendly and yet often fought. Sometimes literally they actually fought. We'll get into that a bit in some of the favorite scenes that I have for this movie. But like as I said earlier, what tempered my expectations a bit was that the fact that I just couldn't care less about cars, but yet Mangold and the crew were able to make me care about the race and care about the actual construction and building of the cars, and the failures and the successes on the journey of building the cars, the fight with the corporations, and just how, you know, how corporate can kind of get in your way when it comes to creating something you know you can create. You know, it's like it was just something I could relate to, honestly. And then just, you know, just to see those guys kind of have to fight through those corporate forces to get out what their vision was and what can truly win the race, get to that ultimate goal. Like, I love the way the movie was able to have you relate to the struggle of these forces trying to stop you from creating what you know. And then for the film, they made it about the creation of the car, obviously, right? But you could apply it to anything, you know, like I was just saying, like anybody trying to get in your way from you actually trying to get out your dream and pursue your vision and the way you want to pursue that vision. And, you know, for the movie, obviously it just happened to be about cars, but again, you can apply it to anything. And I just really appreciated, that storytelling aspect of it. It was just great to be able to, in the midst of this adrenaline and high octane kind of environment, to make it almost something, you know, as relatable as just artists trying to get out their dreams, you know, but being stopped by corporate, you know. So that was a real clever way, I think, of storytelling. So like it was my number 7 of my top 10 of my 2019. So like it was there for a reason. Like, it could have been a little higher. It could, like, there's so many great movies. I mean, it's why it's a top 10, but like it was one I knew it had to be on the list. Like, there was just not even a question. Ford v Ferrari had to be on the list, and they executed it, and it made my list. So I loved it. Okay, so let's get into some more things I loved, and that would be starting with the best moment of the movie. And so I got 2 runner-ups, and then I have my answer. So for my first runner-up for best moment, for me, it would be it would be Ken and Carol actually discussing how it was making the car, right?
It's a hell of a drive. She's out of a machine. Oh, she's fast. Could be faster.
Like it's after the race and after they cross the finish line, and it's just them two kind of embracing each other and kind of just sealing the deal right there that they're just going to continue to work with each other because of what they were just able to accomplish, you know, and I just thought that was so, it was so poignant and just so awesome to see those two, just like from everything they've come from and to the physical fights and verbal fights that they had been through and what felt like double crossing at certain points and so on and so forth. But for them to get to that moment and be like, yeah, we're a pretty good team. You know, and we made a pretty fast car, but we can make a faster one, you know. So I really appreciated that moment, and that was runner-up number 1 for best moment. So runner-up number 2 for best moment is kind of weird, but bear with me. It sounds a little weird to even say, but like my second runner-up for best moment is when Ken dies, and not that I'm like, oh, I wanted Ken Miles to die. Like, no, like the reason why it's in my best moments is because of the way he died, right? He went out the way he would have wanted, at least from what I was able to, you know, take away from the movie. Like, he loved to race and he loved to build cars and he loved to race the cars he built and just loved the drive, right? And so, for him to be on the practice field trying to make another car that'll go even faster, probably getting ready for the Le Mans for the year after, or the year coming up, and for him to pass in that moment, it felt obviously anybody dying is the worst, right? But for him to go out in that way, doing what he loved the most, for me, it was a best moment. I know that's weird. Seeing somebody died is the best moment, but I just think just storytelling wise, and I think just kind of as a whole, you know, as a complete circle of the journey of Ken Miles, I think it was pretty perfect. Again, and that's weird saying it's perfect for someone to die, but for him to die the way he did, I thought was a really special moment. So I guess it'd be more of a special moment than a best moment, but it's my podcast and that's what I'm saying. So, so for my best moment of the movie, it was actually Ken waiting for his teammates to cross the finish line, because in this moment, it showed so much growth but it showed so much growth from Ken, because he had always been so me and not enough we, and in this moment he had already accomplished the perfect lap, which we'll get into a little later, and so he already kind of accomplished the me thing, and in this moment it was like, hey Ken, be a team player for once, right? And to see him from the beginning, and he's just such a solo guy and an immature at times and selfish, you know, you can consider him, and for him to, you know, not have to, like, his name was already etched in history with the perfect lap. So for this moment, he didn't really need the win, because it would get the win already. And, you know, and then Leo Beebe wanted it because it would look good for the photo op and whatnot. And obviously he bucked back at it at first, but then just kind of came to realize, like, hey man, look, you did it. You know, that ultimate goal you always wanted in that perfect lap, you accomplished that. So let's do this one for the team. And again, just to see that growth from him, from selfish to team player, was just the best moment for me. I think I really enjoyed that part of the film. So,
it's off the scale, isn't it? They want you to slow down. Run that by me again. They want you to slow down.
You're outshining that car, Ken.
We're 4 minutes up on McLaren. The Deuce wants the 3/4 across the finish line, 1, 2, 3 all together. They're asking that you be a team player and make that photograph happen for them.
That photograph, that's good. That is good.
That's my best moment of the movie. So with the best moment comes to the favorite scenes. And once again, 2 runner-ups and then my answer. So my first runner-up for favorite scene is actually Henry Ford II starts crying after Shelby gives him a ride in the Ford GT40 MK2. And what I like about the scene is, and I'll get to the part where they're actually in the car, but I actually liked a bit about before this scene as well. And it's actually when Carol locks Leo Beebe into the office.
Firstly, I want to just clear the air. I hope that whatever disagreements between us can just be chalked up to natural red-bloodedness in the heat of battle.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, Leo. Truly, I do.
It falls on me, Shelby, to inform you that I have been appointed overall executive director of the racing program. Now, I do hope that this won't be a problem between us.
Well, I assure you, Leo, it will not.
Hey, Carol.
He kind of tricks him and brings him in to kind of, let's have a conversation. And then he heads out and locks him in the office. So this way he can get Henry II into the car. And then obviously we continue till we get to the car. And then you get that great moment where Carol, puts pedal to the metal and actually lets, Henry II feel what it's actually like to be in the car. Because he'd been on the business side and the manufacturing side of it all. But he actually clearly had never been behind the wheel of one of these beasts of a machine, right?
Miss Ford, you all right?
I had no idea. I had no idea. I wish my daddy, he were alive to see this. To feel this.
Now, this is not a machine just anybody can get in and easily control.
Absolutely not. I had no idea.
Now, you want to win Le Mans. You really want to take first place. Ken Miles is the man to do it.
And so to actually feel it, to actually know what his father had built and know what they were building it for. And obviously all those emotions just came rushing through him. And so you get to the point to where, you kind of pauses for that moment and then it just starts boohoo crying. Like it's a pretty funny moment, but it's also pretty touching too. And also pretty clever on the part of Carol to, look, man, I know what I'm doing. These are cars that I know. You're going to have to let me do my job. You're going to have to get Leo Beebe out of my hair in order for me to make the car that I need to make so we can win this race for you. And so that was just a really great moment. I thought, again, the kind of the combination of locking Leo Beebe in the office prior and then getting, Henry II to cry once he actually gets to experience being behind the, not behind the wheel, but at least being in the car with someone else behind the wheel and feeling the actual power of the machines that he's creating under the Ford name. So that was first runner up. And second runner up, we talked about it a little bit in best moments, but my second runner up for favorite scene is the actual perfect lap.
330.6. That's another record.
It's a perfect lap.
And so, again, like me not really caring about cars and I thought maybe the racing part would be the moments I would check out, but honestly, those were probably some of the more intense moments and more parts that I was probably more intrigued in, and just the way it was shot and the cinematography of these moments like you being in the car and seeing the emotion from Bale, and obviously it's just such a great performance from Bale, but you've gotten to this point in the story, you're rooting for him, man. Like you are rooting for him to get this perfect lap because it's what he's wanted, right? And it kind of goes, you know, and all these things, you know, it's a movie, so they all kind of tie together. But you know, you remember the moment where he's in his son's bedroom and he's mapping out the race, and he's explaining to him, you know, getting that perfect lap, and then you get to the moment to where they're at the practice course, and then where they're testing the cars and building the car, and they kind of have that moment where they're sitting on the course and they're looking off in the distance, and he continues on about, you know, the perfect lap there, and as it finally gets to the moment where you're in the middle of the Le Mans, and they're trying a little tricky thing where, because you can replace parts, they're deciding to replace the brakes because they're going to blow through them. They've discovered as they were putting the car together, but they kind of bent the rules a bit and says you can replace brakes during your pit stop. Or you can replace parts during your pit stop, but here we're going to replace brakes during it, and there's no rules against it. And so, you know, he was going to be behind, but in order to be able to catch up, he was going to have to hit that perfect lap. And so that whole time building that tension and building in that scene, and obviously the story built up to that point, and you've been hearing about this perfect lap and him.
Look out there. Out there is the perfect lap. No mistakes. Every gear change, every corner. Perfect. You see it?
I think so.
Most people can't. Most people don't even know it's out there, but it is. It's there.
Going after it and then actually getting it and accomplishing it. Like I didn't think I would be so wrapped up in it. And man, I'm telling you, I was like on the edge of my seat, like, come on, Ken. Like you can do it. You know, like you're truly, truly rooting for the character of Ken Miles. And that's obviously a credit to Christian Bale, and then a credit to Mangold and the whole crew, the writers and everybody. It's just honestly just a terrific scene to watch. So that's number 2. And then number 1 for me is, honestly, it's the moment where I sat back in my seat and I was like, man, I am watching 2 fucking movie stars right now. like literally this scene started to occur, and that's what was coming in my mind, is like, I am legitimately watching 2 fucking movie stars on my screen. And so, this part is the actual fight that Ken and Carol have in front of Ken's house.
Ken, I'm sorry. Sincerely. Do you have any idea the kind of shit that I had to eat just to get 4 wheels on that grid? No, you don't, because you don't deal with any of that stuff. Now knock it off, Ken. We got work to do, and this car ain't gonna build itself. Okay. All right.
And so this moment was just like, they started to argue, and then the fits start to fly, and then they start to wrestle on the ground, and I was just like, man, they are going for it. I'm like, these are 2 movie stars right here, man. And I was just, and honestly, in that moment, I was like, I am watching a fucking film right now. Like, these guys are going for it. They are acting their ass off, and they are not holding back. And I'm just enjoying the hell out of this movie. Like, just seeing those 2 guys fight. I don't know what it was about that scene that made me, but just maybe that they were just truly going for it, right? Like, they weren't really, I guess the pun intended, pulling any punches in the scene, and they were just truly kind of going for it. And it was a perfect display of their chemistry, throughout the movie. And it was kind of building up. They had some close interactions, and Ken punched him in the face before, but for them to finally both kind of let that energy out. And then it ends with them kind of laughing at each other and the wife sitting on the lawn chair reading and just watching them make fools of themselves and realizing that they're both old men and and fighting hurts. And so and then they kind of just make up and like, I'll see you tomorrow. Jerk, asshole, that kind of thing. So it was, man, I was just honestly just watching it. I was just like, these two are just fucking movie stars, man. And there's nothing like it. There's nothing like watching two movie stars on a screen just act their ass off. And that's what this scene was the epitome of for me. So that's my favorite scene of Ford v Ferrari. So now getting into my favorite lines of the movie. Again, 2 runner-ups and then my answer. So my first runner-up is, it kind of goes back to that embracing after the race, and Ken and Carol are sharing a moment. And obviously this is after the moment where Ken crosses the finish line and then finds out that he actually didn't win and Leo Beebe screwed him. And, he wanted the photo op and just told him, and hopefully it would convince him to cross with the 3 guys so they can get the picture. And he did it. And, ultimately the corporation won in that instant. But the line that Ken says to Carol in that moment, after Carol's, really being really apologetic and like, man, I didn't know. They told me you would win. I didn't know. And then Ken just replies,
I never should have asked you. Selling cars, huh? That's what they do. Well, you promised me the drive. Not the win.
And in that moment, it was, again, it continued to show the growth of Ken and then just Ken's appreciation for the journey of the thing instead of just the goal. Cause, as I said a little earlier, he had already did the thing for him, right? He accomplished that perfect lap. And so, he didn't get the win, but he's in the history books because he's got the perfect lap. They're never going to forget who Ken Miles is because that perfect lap was done by Ken Miles. And so he didn't get the race, but he did get the drive, and that's what Carol promised him. And that's what he got. And so they get to that point to where he's so appreciative of it and being able to look at it and not be angry and just being like, you know what? It sucks. I would have loved to have won it, and I most likely should have won it. And, Leo Beebe's an asshole and he screwed me, but look, I got the drive, I got the drive. So I really like that. So that's the first runner up right there. Second runner up is actually a line from Carroll Shelby. And I believe it's in a moment where they're introducing him at one of the Ford dealerships, and he just kind of introducing himself and getting into, why he's here to help, build the car and why he's here to help Ford win the race at the Le Mans. And he kind of goes into a story, a bit of a speech, if you will. And then he gets into a bit of a story about his father and how his father inspired him and how his father told him this one anecdote. And then, so Carroll Shelby then begins to say,
when I was 10 years old, Pop said to me, son, it's a truly lucky man who knows what he wants to do in this world, because that man will never work a day in his life.
Man, and that line right there, it may seem simple or whatnot, but for me, it just kind of related as a person who's like 29 and still trying to figure out what he wants to do in this life. I've always kind of understood that sentiment because I've always been like super jealous of people who have been able to figure out what they want to do, especially like at a young age, like just know what they want to do. And, for them, like you said, they won't ever work a day in their lives because they just already know what it is. Whereas like, I'm still currently trying to figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life. So it doesn't feel like work for me. So it just, that line right there just kind of truly, I just resonated with, and it just felt felt like something I could relate to, and just a sentiment that I had already always thought and shared, and then to have that be a line that Carol Shelby's father shared with him. Just a line that I truly appreciated within the movie. And so my pick for my favorite line is actually just a funny moment, and I believe it's our introduction to or at least our introduction into Ken and Carol's relationship. And it's it's a moment where Ken is getting his car inspected by the inspector, and he's got the old rule book, and obviously Carol can see the commotion happening with the inspector, and so Carol comes over and he starts to say like,
Hey, Bill. Hey, Bill, what seems to be the problem?
Well, the problem is that Bill here is an arsehole.
No, he doesn't mean that.
No, yes, he does.
No,
yes,
he
he does.
doesn't
Yes,
mean
no,
that.
he
He's just
really
fooling
does
with you,
think
Bill.
that
He's just
Bill
fooling with you.
is an
Bill,
arsehole.
let me-
I'm just doing my job here.
so I started cracking up in the theater, and just the delivery by Bale with those lines, and obviously he says it with the accent, and then in the arsehole. I don't know. I can't say that's terrible. I can't believe I just did that. But it was just hilarious in that moment, and and just kind of going spazzing on the inspector. And yeah, it was just, and obviously you just got this like, oh, this Ken Miles guy, and I think one of the other companies was trying to, thinking about approaching him to be their driver, and then that kind of blow up with the inspector. They were like, yeah, they were gonna stay away from this Ken Miles guy, right? and so, but I just thought it was a really funny moment. And it was one of the funnier moments in the film, outside of the, the fight that they had on the scene. I was laughing during that as well. I thought that was just hilarious. So that was great. So that's my favorite, line is, no, he really does mean it. Bill is an asshole. so that was great. And then, so we get into, favorite performance, and our two leads, man. I've been talking about it this whole time here. These two guys were spectacular, starting with Damon. I think it's the best performance Damon has had since The Martian. And I love Damon in The Martian, and I love The Martian. I love that movie. I'll probably end up doing that, as a That's Not Cinema episode here, at some point, but he done the one with the Great Wall of China movie, and then he did the Jason Bourne thing, and that was cool. But like, it's been a while since you'd seen, honestly, since The Martian, I believe personally, that Damon had just been like, a charismatic movie star on the screen, and he was great, and he did that same thing here, and ultimately delivered, and I enjoyed watching him, on screen. And then obviously the chemistry he had with Bale was wonderful as well. And just to see, Matt Damon is one of those guys, and one of the great actors we have, and to see him in such a good movie, and pulling off a great performance and a charismatic performance, and you just kind of can't take your eyes off him, like he's a movie star. Like he's just a fucking movie star. And I enjoyed that from him. And then, I mean, what else is there to say about Christian Bale, man? I mean, this guy, to start off, I mean, just his dedication and his versatility, from this movie. I believe he was coming off of Vice, where he was playing Dick Cheney, and he literally put on all the weight, to play that role, and then to cut all that weight and to get in the shape of a race car driver, to go from Dick Cheney to Ken Miles. And just look at those pictures of those movies. If you haven't done that, like, go to Google and look, I'm sure you can just type it up. So you can type it up and find it. Like, see how he looks as Dick Cheney, and then see how he looks as Ken Miles. And those movies are back to back. So, like, just that, and obviously that's not the first time he's, gone super skinny or bulked up, and like, he's just, his commitment to a role and the dedication he has, and then just obviously his performance and his charisma on screen, and his ability to just keep you, engaged the entire time. And then obviously his chemistry with Damon, they were great together. Throughout the whole thing, they were great together. When they would bicker, when they would banter, when they would get along, when they would embrace, when they would throw punches and wrestle on the ground, like they were together. They were great. They were those two. Just, I could watch those two in something else at any point. Like, again, one of the drawing forces for me was Bale and Damon, and because they were the two leads, and I knew I was going to be like, yeah, I gotta watch this. Like, this is great. I need to see this, just with those two. And then obviously Mangold as the director. It was just a perfect match. Just a perfect match. I'm just glad it worked out, and we got a pretty brilliant movie, out of it because of those two lead actors right there. Like, as I said in my tweet review, like, just, this is the reason you go to the movies, and those two are fucking movie stars. It's just flat out, just fucking movie stars. And so with all that praise comes some negativity, and I got nothing. Really, I got nothing. I tried to think of, like, what didn't I like about this movie? And then I kind of got close to maybe it being Leo Beebe, but that's just a great job by Josh Lucas. Like, you know what I mean? Like I didn't like the character. I thought the character was an asshole, but that's what he was supposed to be, right? And like, that's what the script called for. And Josh Lucas gave a brilliant performance. Like, if I'm really coming out the movie, like, I really couldn't stand that dude, then he did his job. And so I can't say that's like my least favorite part of the movie. So I don't really have one. I was like, legitimately, like, I mean, there's gotta be something I didn't like about the movie. Like, maybe the kid was annoying, or maybe this plot didn't work. Honestly, like, I thought the kid was fine. I thought the kind of B story of it all with the relationship between him and his wife, Ken Miles and his wife, I thought that was fine as well. I guess maybe if, now that I'm trying to rack my brain to find something negative to say about the movie, because I really don't have anything. Maybe I would have wanted them to explore a little bit more into Carol's past of driving. We got a few scenes, and then a few scenes of him popping his pills, but we don't ever really dig into it at all. And obviously that would have made for a much longer movie. And I think the cut we got was great on its own. And I'm sure it probably would have stopped the momentum a bit if it would have gotten into, what are the pills he's taking, and why does Carol Shelby have a drug problem? And that probably would have ruined the movie. So I can't even call that a true negative or at least favorite part of the movie, because it probably would have messed up the movie we got. And I thought the movie we got was pretty freaking perfect. So, least favorite part of the movie, I don't got one. Moving on. So, now we're on to who won the movie. And for this one, I'm gonna go who won the movie character wise with this one, right? So my answer is Ken Miles, right? And it's similar to the reason why I chose it for one of the best moments. I think he got the race to Le Mans. He got to record the perfect lap. He got to go out doing what he wanted to do, doing what he loved to do, right? And I'm sure he would have wanted to be around for his family and to continue race and, see his kid maybe following in his footsteps, but to parrot a line that Carol Shelby says earlier, which was, one of my favorite lines, it's a truly lucky man who knows what he wants to do in this world, because that man will never work a day in his life. To me, that was Ken Miles. He got to do what he wanted to do, and then got to go out doing what he wanted to do.
There's a point, 7,000 RPM, where everything fades. The machine becomes weightless, just disappears. All that's left is a body moving through space and time. 7,000 RPM. That's where you meet it. You feel it coming. Creeps up on you close in your ear. Ask you a question. The only question that matters.
Get the van!
Who are you?
And so, for me, it seemed pretty easy, especially if you're looking character-wise, as far as who won the movie. That answer is pretty overwhelmingly Ken Miles, I think. But but you can also say Henry Ford. Like Ford in itself, won the movie because they ultimately won the Le Mans, and Carroll Shelby became super rich and made a bunch of cars with the Shelby name, and and from this, like everyone was successful, obviously except for Ferrari's still successful. They're still selling Ferraris. They just lost to Le Mans in 1966. But yeah, so no, as far as character wise and as far as who won the movie, it was very, very easily Ken Miles there. Like it's not even honestly not even a question. It was fairly obvious. So here we are at the last question. This is a fairly quick podcast. I kind of breezed through this. I didn't expect to breeze through this one so fast. But last question of every pod, we ask: that's cinema or that's not cinema? That's cinema. Very obviously, that's cinema. As you can hear, how enthusiastic I am about this film. Man, this movie's great. Just flat out, it's a great movie. It was obviously one of my favorite movies. It was my number 7 in my top 10 in 2019, and I enjoyed it on rewatch. I think I've seen it at least 3 times now. It's just man, you want to see 2 movie stars on a screen give a hell of a performance, even if you don't care about cars. Ford v Ferrari. Like, that's it. Ford v Ferrari. Oh, and the other thing is, like, you could almost, like, I even get some nervousness going into it. Like, you could look at it as, like, oh, is this just some big Ford infomercial? And you can probably kind of look at it like that. But the story is too good for me to even notice any of that, to be honest with you. I didn't think of it at all. Like, obviously, they were making a car for Ford, but it being an infomercial, if anything, didn't come up for me. So it's worth it. It's worth the watch. It's cinema, clearly cinema. I think Marty would even approve of it being cinema. And, yeah, that's it. If you have not seen Ford v Ferrari, please go see Ford v Ferrari. Go see it. We're all at home right now. Rent Ford v Ferrari, buy Ford v Ferrari, do what you got to do. Just watch it, because it's phenomenal. If you just want a good time, a popcorn, crowd-pleasing movie, you want to root for 2 movie stars, Ford v Ferrari. Ford v Ferrari. Easily. Matt Damon, Christian Bale, James Mangold. I mean, it don't get any better than that. And as always, if a movie makes you feel anything, and Ford v Ferrari gave me an adrenaline rush and heartfelt tears. Yeah, that's cinema.
A film that's like a theme park film, for example, the Marvel type pictures, where the theaters become amusement parks. That's a different experience. And it's not even, I was saying earlier, it's not cinema, it's something else. Not cinema, it's something else. Not cinema, it's something else. Not cinema, it's something else.